You hear it all the time, right? The economy is growing. GDP is up. It's treated like the ultimate report card for a country's success. But what if that big number is telling us the wrong story? Today we're looking beyond GDP to ask a really simple question. Are we actually measuring what makes life good?
I mean, just think about this for a second. If the economy is booming, but our environment is taking a hit, or if national income is on the rise, but so is anxiety and inequality, can you really call that progress? This is the core conflict we're digging into.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the metric that has ruled them all for decades, GDP. It has been the undisputed king of how we measure a nation's performance. So what is this thing exactly?
Well, to put it simply, GDP just adds up all the money spent on stuff inside a country. It's purely a measure of economic activity. The more money changing hands, the higher the GDP. It was actually developed during the Great Depression and World War II, mostly as a way to keep track of production. And from there, it just became the global standard.
But here's the wild part. This warning isn't from some modern-day critic. This is from Simon Kuznets, the man who created the GDP framework, all the way back in 1934. From the very beginning, the architect of the system was telling us, hey, don't use this thing to measure well-being. And yet, that's exactly what we've been doing ever since.
That warning from Kuznets really hints at some deep problems. So let's take a look at the major cracks that have started to show in GDP's crown.
This is probably the most bizarre flaw of them all. GDP has no way of telling the difference between productive activity and destructive activity. It just counts the money. So things like an oil spill, a hurricane, even a war, they can actually make GDP go up because of all the spending on cleanup and rebuilding.
This table breaks it down perfectly. Economists call these defensive expenditures. Basically, we're spending money to fix problems, not to actually move forward. Cleaning up pollution, that boosts the services sector. Building more prisons, that counts as government spending. Even a costly divorce adds to the economy through legal fees. In every single one of these cases, society is dealing with a negative, but GDP just sees a positive number. This famous quote from Robert F. Kennedy just hits the nail on the head. He pointed out that GDP counts things like bombs and cigarette ads, but it completely ignores the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the strength of our communities. It measures output, not the outcome. So, on top of counting bads as goods, GDP just completely ignores huge parts of our world simply because no money changes hands. We're talking about all the unpaid childcare, elder care, and volunteer work that is literally the foundation of our society. And it also treats the depletion of our natural resources, our forests, our clean water, as if it costs us nothing. And the value of that ignored work? It is absolutely staggering. Economists estimate that if we actually counted unpaid household work, the official GDP of developed countries would jump by 20 to 50%. It's a massive, essential part of the economy that we just pretend is invisible.
Okay, so if GDP is such a flawed ruler, what's the alternative? Let's dive into a new generation of tools that are designed to give us a much more complete picture of what's going on.
One of the leading alternatives is the Genuine Progress Indicator, or GPI, and it's a fascinating concept. You start with the same basic data as GDP, but then you adjust it. You add the positive things GDP misses, like volunteering and housework, and then you subtract the negatives, like the costs of pollution, crime, and resource depletion. Here's a really simple way to think about it. GDP is like a company's gross revenue. It's just the total amount of money coming in the door. GPI, on the other hand, is like the company's net profit. It accounts for all the costs and tells you what you're actually left with. It's the difference between a simple total and the real bottom line.
And when you apply the GPI, you get a pretty shocking result. This chart shows what researchers have dubbed the Great Divergence. While GDP per person has just kept climbing steadily since World War II, GPI per person peaked way back around 1978 and has been pretty much flat or even declining ever since. This supports something called the threshold hypothesis, the idea that after a certain point, the costs of economic growth like pollution and inequality start to outweigh the benefits.
So, while some places are trying to adjust GDP, one country decided to just start from scratch. In the 1970s, the Kingdom of Bhutan famously declared that gross national happiness, or GNH, was way more important than gross national product.
And listen, this isn't just some feel-good slogan. It's a super sophisticated framework for policy. GNH is built on these 4 pillars you see here, from sustainable development to good governance. And those are then broken down into 9 specific domains, like psychological well-being and community vitality. The whole idea is that every single government policy is judged based on its impact on human flourishing and the environment.
And this is what GNH looks like in practice. Using really detailed surveys, Bhutan can actually map out the well-being of its population. The goal isn't just to make one number go up, it's to understand where people are struggling, whether it's work-life balance or social support, and then design policies to help them get what they need for a good life.
So, from the GPI to gross national happiness, there's a global movement brewing. It's forcing us all to ask that fundamental question Robert Kennedy posed: what truly makes life worthwhile, and how do we even begin to measure it?
Now, this is not a settled science by any means. There's a really fascinating academic debate about the link between money and happiness. On one hand, you have the Easterlin paradox, which suggests that once a country's basic needs are met, more money doesn't really make people happier. But then other researchers, like Stevenson and Wolfers, say there's no limit, that richer nations are always happier. It just goes to show how complicated this question really is.
This push for change really went mainstream in 2009 with a huge report from a commission led by Nobel laureate economists. Their recommendations gave us a clear roadmap. Stop focusing only on production and start focusing on well-being. Look at what real households are experiencing, not just abstract national averages. And create national balance sheets that track our natural and social wealth, not just our flow of income.
Which brings us to the main takeaway here. We're probably not going to replace GDP with another single magic number. Instead, the future is likely a dashboard. You know, a pilot doesn't fly a plane by looking at just one dial. They need to see altitude, speed, and fuel all at once. Our leaders need a full suite of indicators for health, education, and equality to guide us safely forward.
And that leaves us with this final thought. This debate over GDP isn't just for economists. It's about our collective values. Because what we choose to measure is what we choose to pursue. So, if we started measuring the things that truly matter, our health, our relationships, the beauty of our planet, what different choices would we all start to make?